Let's look at consumer behavior. Why would anyone study consumer behavior? Because you want to try to predict and anticipate what people will be doing. You want to understand why people are doing things, how often people are doing things, if, when, why not they are doing things. You want to be able to measure people's satisfaction and their perception of value. So why do they buy? Why do they buy? Don't buy, and why do they buy again? Why do they buy our competitors? Um, what would we need to do in order for them to buy? So you want to find the reasons that they have behind their decisions. But these reasons are within what's called the black box. So the black box is what we don't know. It's the processing of the information. So we can manage the input part, so the first part, which is giving them information about the product, sending them ads, sending them posts, sending them billboards, sending them news, showing them, demonstrating, having other people show, competitors showing their things, them hearing things from third party and all that. All of this information they're receiving, most of this information they're not memorizing unless they have an interest, they are involved, or they are ready to buy because they have a problem to solve. And at that time, there's the processing of the information, and the response is therefore to buy the product, or to use the product, or to recommend the product, or to search for more information about the product. But what are all the factors which are influencing consumers to buy? There's the cultural, social, personal, and psychological factors. The one that has the biggest impact is the cultural factors. Your culture determines a great amount of the decisions that you make, but there's also the subcultures. So your cultures may be your ethnicity, your country of birth, it may be also the language that you use, it may be also the religion that you practice, but there are also subcultures, and subcultures may be based on a hobby. Obviously, the subculture maybe so you could be Asian, and then you could be Asian American. So being Asian is your subculture, and your main culture is American. But there's beside the ethno and race culture that you may have, there are cultures that are also very important, such as your favorite sports, or your favorite book, or your favorite club, or your favorite type of food. All of this may create some kind of subculture that will eventually influence you. So if you are a vegetarian, being a vegetarian may be so deep in your everyday decision that this becomes a subculture. But you may be a fan of baseball, and that becomes something that very much influences many of your decisions in how you consume. The social class is also very important, and it's the type of class which is oftentimes based on your income, but it could be also based on your wealth, or it could be based on the type of jobs that you have. Then the social factor, which group do you feel that you belong to? So you may feel that you belong to a group of a certain genre of music, or within a certain ranking within your skills of music, or you may feel that you belong to the students group as well. So that has an influence. A big influence that is extremely important when you're very young, but it comes back later because you may start your own family, is who you are in the family and what role you have in the family. But also the status that you have in your society. Means if you're someone who is leading, or if you're someone who has a lower rank, so your rank in your society is very important. And then you have the personal factors. Oftentimes, people think the personal factors are the most important, when the most important is the cultural factors. But personal factors are very important, specifically your age and your gender do have a strong influence, but also various occupations that you have. The fact that you may have a higher or lower income, the type of other activities that you have. So there's some kind of overlap between lifestyle and subculture sometimes. And then to a lower extent, at least that what people believe is the personality factors that you may have that will influence your purchases, but people usually give much more weight to personality in making decisions than the reality of the true reasons for why they make decisions to buy. So personality, such as someone who cares a lot about new things. Maybe you like older things, maybe you like newer things, maybe you like things made in America versus things made overseas. These specific traits are very important of personality, but maybe you like to try new things versus people that like to not try new things. So that has an impact. And then your perception of your how you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, self-concept has an influence on how you consume. So these personal factors have a weight much less than what we think. And then there's deeper thoughts that sometimes are not controlled because they are unconscious, is all the elements within the psychological factors, such as the level of interest that you have, the higher level, lower level, and that determines your motivation. Meaning, if you have a problem that you need to solve, usually your motivation becomes bigger in order to try to find a solution. But also your perceptions and how you interpret things, how much experience you have, and learning, meaning the knowledge that you have, the sort of attitudes and beliefs that you have towards the products, which is based on your past experience, on your knowledge, on your interpretation of what other people think of the product, has an importance psychologically to determine your motivation and your interest and involvement in trying to buy the product. So using again the social factors of family, within family, there's also cycles depending on the situation you have as a family. If you're single, married, with children, with older children, with children that are also married and so forth, that has an impact on what you will be consuming and how you'll be consuming things, because it changes your perceptions of what you think is the most important. This changes with time because of different perspectives, because of the different status that you have and the different role that you play and the number of people that you are responsible. A very important element of consumer decision making is people perceive needs and hierarchy of needs according to the Maslow hierarchy of needs. So the lower needs are usually the first and the second, which these are called innate, which all of these are actually called innate that you have from birth. And as a marketer, what you do is you create wants in order to satisfy those needs. So the first need is a physiological need, means it's the need to eat and breathe and drink, and essentially that's very basic instinctive needs that you have, and you may be buying products in order to satisfy these needs. The next needs is needs of safety, of protection, order and stability, where you want to buy a product that you feel maybe has warranty, product that has high rating. And so these products will give you safety. Then there's a social need, maybe buying a product that you find that people like, that is well accepted, that is the most sold. The number one sold product in America will fulfill the social needs. It's the one that everybody loves. It's sort of the universally liked product. Then there's the ego need, which is an extension of the social need. In that situation, it's not the one that everybody has. It's the one that is more rare, the one that is more exclusive, the one that talks about who you are and puts you in a better social status position. And then you have the final need, which is away from what everybody else. So it's not interpersonal, like the third and the fourth, which are interpersonal. The fifth is personal. So it's not based on what other people think, but it's based on what you think. So these are very much trying to be fulfilling your personal enrichment, your self-actualizing, giving you feeling of achievements, and having done something right based on your own standards. So in that situation, maybe will be like trying to cook something yourself or trying to build something yourself. So buying a product, but which is available as a kit. So it will give you the opportunity to do something to show that you can succeed something and this product is making you feel good about yourself, but based on your own criteria. So perceptions are how people look at things and try to organize in a meaningful and coherent way. So they select the information, they organize this information, and they interpret it. The problem with perceptions is that you use your senses, and therefore people have different perception of the same thing. In addition, sometimes people selectively try to remember things in a way that is consistent with their own perceptions and belief and what they think is expected for them to remember. So there is some biases and there is some distortions, and therefore there is issues with what do they remember and how correctly do they remember things. Do they remember things correctly? Most of the time they don't, because they try to remember things in a way that it's consistent with their belief. The absolute threshold is the lowest level at which an individual can experience a sensation. So when you create a new product, it's new, but to what extent is it perceived as new? If it's perceived not new enough, people are not going to buy it. So it's too low, it's under the absolute threshold. If it's perceived as too new, too innovative, that may be also a problem, because people think that this product may be too good for them or too futuristic, and therefore they're going to pass. So understanding the exact amount that is necessary is very, very important. I'll talk about in just a minute when we talk about the just noticeable difference. And then the sensory adaptation is the fact that you may have been successful in meeting the absolute threshold and in fact getting to a point of satisfaction where people are satisfied with the product, but eventually they get used to what they have and they are looking for something even better. And at that time, you want to find what's the next innovation that you need to create. And therefore, this concept of just noticeable difference is extremely important, because it talks about the fact that you need to have right enough of changes in order to catch people's attention, interest, in order to get them to want to buy the product or learn more about the product. This minimum is very important, and you should aim for the minimum and just maybe above the minimum in order to be competitive. It can be perceived as what I call the cherry on top. This just noticeable differences. Enough changes of the product allows the product to be superior, and therefore the product is better. So this is sort of the key element of competitiveness. If you are the same as everybody else, they won't notice you. So what do you change? Maybe you just change the price. You're just cheaper. But the problem is, how much cheaper do you need to be in order to be perceived cheaper? Sometimes 99 cents makes it 1 cent different, makes it better than $1. And so you have to see the amount that you need to change in order to get people to see the change, to perceive the change. So here's a company that we worked with my students in the past. It's a very famous company making cereal. In fact, it's extremely famous in almost everywhere else but the United States. And so, and it's a British product originally. So if you go in Great Britain, this is the #1 cereal that everybody consumes. If you go in America, almost everyone does not know this product. So we start doing some research and trying to understand what is this J&D that it's missing in this product. What is it that this product is not, why is it not working, and why is it not getting attention? And so we quickly found out that this cereal was seen as extremely boring. There was no attention and interest for the cereal. It looked like it was something for someone that was trying to be on a very hard diet, almost a medical product, something very stale without flavors, very dry, and definitely something that would not appeal to kids. And appealing to kids is very important in the United States when you sell cereal. So the students started doing some research and found that there was a need for a product that would have multiple benefits that would be noticeable. And how would they be noticeable is that you could essentially get some kind of yogurt that would be high protein, but at the same time you would have to eat it in a way that would be very practical and convenient in how you would eat it. So the students designed the Go Wito, which was the little icon, because when you sell a cereal, at least for kids, it's very important to have an icon. And then you put it inside the paste, like a sort of a tube paste where people could eat the Go Wito breakfast cereal from this little device. So it would be very convenient, very easy. You would go in people's lunch and take away type of food, snacks, and so forth. A very successful work that was done by the students by looking at, therefore, what people want, why they don't want this, what would it needs in order to be just noticeably different, and therefore something that they will want to consume. What are the steps of the buyer decision process? So it's important to see that the steps for the buyer decision process, and in a few minutes I will be talking about the steps for the business buyer decision process. Those two are very similar. The main difference is, as you will see, there's more steps when it's a business making a decision. So the buyer as a consumer has lesser steps, but they both start the same. They both recognize that they have a problem, and therefore they are then looking for solutions. And sometimes the solutions, they know the solution, so it's internal search. So they're looking in what do I know could be the solution, and that could be enough for them to make a decision to buy something. Otherwise, they look for more information in order to see all the alternatives, and then they make the decision to buy. And then eventually they think about the fact if they were satisfied or not satisfied, but it's not very formal. It's just intuitive. I like the product and I tell other people and I keep buying it because it's been a success. What is important also to see is that not everybody buys at the same time. There's different group of people and they buy at different times. So there is a very important group. Well, there's two important groups, I think, in getting a product to be adopted. The first, a very important group, is like the ignition. It's the spark. The spark is created by the innovators, but getting the innovators to like your product does not mean that you will be successful. The moment where you start seeing the fact that you are likely to be successful is when you have the early adopters that buy the product. The innovators are a very small group and they don't generate enough momentum in order to get the success. The purpose of the innovators is to ignite, it's to start the process of getting early adopters. The purpose of the innovators is not to start the process of adoption as if it's, that means if you have the innovators, you therefore have the rest. Having the innovators is the first steps, and you use those innovators to get the attention of the early adopters. And once the early adopter starts, then it's very likely that everything is going to start rolling in the right direction to get the next group of people, the early majority, then the late majority. And then eventually the product is sort of phased out and it goes to a group who are called the laggards. You don't want to discount the laggards because sometimes you have a product that works well and it's sort of in a position of cash cow and generates enough profit because you have less competitors and you need to spend less money in order to sell the product, that it still generates some profit. But when you start getting to the laggards, you know that you are in the last group of consumers and this product eventually will be phased out. What's also important when you look at this slide is to understand that there's a bell curve, and sometimes the bell curve is much more steep because the products go into a very fast early adopter in majority, and then it goes into laggards very quickly, which means that those percentage are just a rule of thumb. It does not have to be exactly those numbers every single time. This is just for a ballpark for you to understand. So the next buyer behavior that I want to talk about is from the businesses. The businesses are broken down into three groups of type of buyer decisions. The first one is called the new task buying, which is the one that require the most involvement from the business. Is they've never bought it, or they want to totally change what they bought in the past, and therefore they want to totally revise their process of buying and their who's going to be the suppliers and so forth. Modify rebuy is a small modification that therefore does not require a huge change of processes and reconsideration. You just make a modification. Maybe you bought t-shirts, and you bought t-shirts, you bought just 5 colors, and now you want to just add a new color that you're not buying before. So it's just a small change The straight rebuy is you just keep buying what you bought before. So you take your last purchase order and you make just a renewal of a new purchase order of the same thing. Maybe you change the quantity and that's about it. What's important with businesses to understand is that many people are playing different roles. Therefore, there are different status and roles of different people who are going to be making the decision. Obviously, the larger the company, the larger the business, the more you have to take into account those different roles. Sometimes those 5 roles are held by 2 people. But however, it's important to see that there may be someone buying and there may be someone using. There may be someone who is making the decisions of what should be bought, who is not actually the one buying nor using. So if you use the example of the computers at the university, CSUN University, is they are someone who is the person that's maintaining the computer, and this person has decided of 2 or 3 computers that they want to be trained to maintain, and that they are therefore recommending the faculty to buy. So they decide what should be bought, but eventually the user has choices of 3 products. The influencers is obviously in this situation, the faculty is also an influencer. Maybe the people making the purchase are also the influencers. So the influencers could be multiple people who are not the deciders. And then you have the gatekeepers. They are the people that are influential because they make decisions in order to do the processing of the order, the taking care of the logistics, taking care of the warehousing, and taking care and managing the inventories and all of this. So those people don't really decide. They sort of have a level of influence, but which is a lower of influence, which is more like of a gatekeeper, of a processor. But there are people that you need to take into account that will have a weight. So I see, for example, gatekeepers in my cognac business. They are the people who are going to be managing the cognac and actually put them on the shelves, for example, in the store. Oftentimes, I had one time where I had a packaging that was very beautiful, but very delicate. The customers absolutely loved the packaging, but the people putting them on the shelf really didn't like my packaging because they were breaking the packaging. Oftentimes, the first time that they were handling the packaging. And so they didn't break them the second time and third time because they knew how to do it, having learned from the first time, but they would complain. And so they would complain to the buyer and they would complain to people, different people making decisions. And eventually I would hear that there would be a store in Miami that would be complaining about this product. And all this information would go back up all the way to France, to hearing about that one person shelving the product that's complaining about it. So it had an influence, and it had therefore an influence in how we design the packaging in order to minimize this person having issues, even though it was not the user, it was not the buyer and all of this. So gatekeepers may have at some stage some influences. The stages of the business buyer are again starts the same. I mentioned that than the consumers, which is essentially there's a problem. So like the photocopy machine is not working anymore. So we need a new photocopy machine ASAP. So if suddenly they decide to buy a new photocopy machine, it may be a straight rebuy. They buy the exact same photocopy machine from the same supplier, and it's a straight rebuy. If they do a modify, maybe they say, we want a photocopy machine that has a faster printing option, because this one, since we're changing, we just get the exact same one, but just the model that offers a faster printing. But it may be a situation where they decide that they need to change all their printers for a large company, and it's going to be hundreds of printers being bought at the same time. So they go into more details at looking at how long are we going to keep this printer? What are the satisfaction and dissatisfaction we had with the past printers that we want to avoid in the future? Who would be the users? What do they say? The people doing the maintenance. So you develop some very specific description of the product, and you try to maximize the fact that you will try to have as many people satisfied with the product as possible for the different needs that these people have with the product. And then you do a supplier search. So you go more thoroughly. As a buyer, you may be searching for one supplier, and that's good enough. As a business, because you're trying to save money and maximize the the quality of the product in order to produce something with it, you look at more than one most of the time. Again, it depends what's the expense, the importance of this purchase. And at that time, if it's a very large volume of purchase, you will maybe offer some solicitations, which you may be advertising that you're looking at a large volume purchase and you're looking at suppliers to contact you with a proposal. And then you go into a review and the selection of the best supplier, and then you purchase the product. And then you eventually straight rebuy the same product, or you make some modification and you evaluate the performance in a very structured way. So the business buyer is more formal, is more organized, is more structured, has more people involved, and there is some kind of performance that everyone is looking at because it's a business. So therefore, there's some level of efficiency and to help the business grow. The decision that is behind all of this